19 surgeons couldn't save the merger. But the hospital janitor solved it in 4 minutes. And what the billionaire CEO did next left the entire boardroom speechless. Nora Castillo was not supposed to be in that room. She had been called up to the 14th floor of Hargrove Medical Center because someone on the executive team had knocked over a coffee carafe during what everyone agreed was the worst board meeting in the hospital's 30-year history. She came in quietly, the way she always did, pushing her gray cart through the side door with one hand, a folded towel already in the other. She wore the same navy uniform she wore every Tuesday. Her hair was pulled back with a rubber band she'd borrowed from her daughter's homework pile that morning and never returned. She moved along the wall. That was the thing about Nora. She moved along walls. It was something she'd learned not as a habit but as a survival skill. When you cleaned rooms where powerful people argued, you made yourself part of the furniture, and the furniture stayed along the walls. The argument was about a clinical trial agreement. Specifically, a liability clause buried in an 80-page contract with a pharmaceutical company called Veritas Biogroup. Hargrove was trying to finalize a research partnership worth $120 million, and the deal had stalled for 6 weeks because of one paragraph on page 53. 19 people sat around the table. 3 senior attorneys, 5 hospital executives, a board member who had flown in from Boston, 2 consultants from a firm that charged $400 an hour, and at the head of the table, arms crossed, jaw set like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days, which he hadn't, sat Cole Hargrove, 39 years old, CEO and majority shareholder of the hospital his grandfather had built, and his father had nearly bankrupted before Cole had taken it over at 31 and turned it around through what colleagues called ruthless precision and what Cole himself called doing what was obvious. He was not a man who tolerated being confused. And right now, he was very confused. "This clause does not protect us," said the senior attorney, a woman named Patricia. "If a trial participant claims injury, the way this is written, Veritas can shift the entire liability burden onto Hargrove. We cannot sign this. We also cannot lose this deal," said the board member from Boston. "Veritas is offering us first access to 3 drug trials. First access. Do you understand what that means for our research division?" "I understand what a $100 million lawsuit means, too," Patricia shot back. Cole pressed 2 fingers to his forehead. He had been listening to this particular loop for 40 minutes. Around him, people quoted precedents, cited cases, talked over each other. Nobody was solving anything, they were just getting louder. Nora finished wiping the spilled coffee from the credenza. She was about to leave when her eyes caught the document projected on the wall screen, the disputed paragraph, highlighted in yellow. She stopped. She read it once. Then again. She wasn't trying to get involved. She was trying to remember where she'd seen that exact clause structure before, because she had seen it before, and not just once. "That's an indemnification trap," she said. She hadn't planned to say it out loud. It just came out, the way things sometimes do when you've spent 10 years reading contracts at a kitchen table after your kids go to bed. The room went silent in that very specific way. Rooms go silent when someone unexpected has spoken. 19 heads turned. Cole Hargrove's gray eyes landed on the woman in the navy uniform still holding a damp towel. "Excuse me?" said one of the consultants, not unkindly, but with the tone of a man who had never once considered that the answer to his problem might come from the person cleaning up after him. Nora didn't lower her gaze. She'd spent enough years being looked through to know that looking away was never the right response. The clause is written so that the indemnification obligation triggers on adverse events, but it never defines what qualifies as adverse. That word does all the work. Without a definition, Veritas gets to decide retroactively what counts, which means they can shift liability onto you for anything they want after the fact. She paused. There's a federal guideline. The FDA's 2017 Informed Consent Update, Section 50.25, that specifically addresses this kind of ambiguous language in clinical trial agreements. If you anchor your liability language to that definition, the clause becomes enforceable on your terms, not theirs. Another silence. Longer this time. Patricia the attorney had already opened her laptop. Cole Hargrove had not moved. He was looking at Nora the way you look at something that doesn't fit inside any category you've ever used, and you're not quite sure whether to be unsettled or fascinated. "How do you know that?" he asked. His voice was dry, careful. "I read a lot," Nora said. What kind of reading? Regulatory law, healthcare compliance mostly. I have about 40 binders at home. She picked up her towel and her spray bottle. The coffee's cleaned up. I'll get out of your way. Don't, Cole said. She stopped. He stood up slowly, walked around the side of the table toward her. The other 19 people in the room watched this in perfect silence. Say it again. The whole thing. Nora looked at him evenly. He was taller than she'd expected, and closer. The FDA section gives you a definition for adverse event that both parties have to honor under federal compliance rules. You insert a single line into Clause 14C referencing that definition, and suddenly Veritas can't decide what counts after the fact. The ambiguity disappears. The trap disappears with it. Patricia was typing fast. The board member from Boston had his phone out. One of the consultants was pulling up a document on his tablet, with an expression on his face that Nora recognized. It was the expression of someone who had been paid a great deal of money not to have known this. Cole crossed his arms. He was still looking at her. Did you study law? 2 years of healthcare administration at Loyola. I left to take care of my mother when she got sick. I never went back. She adjusted the strap of her cart. I kept studying on my own. It made sense to me in a way other things didn't. He nodded once, slowly. Come to my office. I still have the third-floor bathrooms. Someone else will cover them. Nora looked at him for a moment. All right. Cole's office was on the corner of the 14th floor with glass on 2 sides and a view of downtown Houston that most people pause to appreciate. Nora didn't pause. She sat in the chair across from his desk and folded her hands in her lap, with the ease of someone who was comfortable in her own skin, regardless of where that skin happened to be located. Cole placed a thick contract on the desk in front of her. Not the Veritas agreement. A different one. A research subcontracting deal with a university hospital in Dallas. Tell me what you see. She read for 3 minutes without speaking. Then she said, the payment schedule in Section 8 conflicts with the deliverables timeline in Appendix B. If the university misses a milestone, which timelines in academic settings almost always do, your right to withhold payment kicks in automatically. But the penalty clause for withholding runs against you simultaneously. You'd be penalized for exercising a right the contract itself gives you. She looked up. Whoever drafted this either made a mistake or wanted you to be too busy to notice. Cole leaned back in his chair. Our attorneys reviewed this 3 times. Attorneys review for legality. They don't always read for logic. He was quiet for a moment. You've been working here for how long? 4 years. 4 years. He repeated it without inflection, but something behind his eyes shifted. And before Hargrove? Cleaning work, mostly. A billing office for a while. I did medical coding part-time when my daughter was small. She tilted her head slightly. I'm not a legal professional, Mr. Hargrove. I want to be clear about that. I can't sign anything, appear on behalf of the hospital, or give advice in any official capacity. But you can think, yes, and observe, yes. He picked up his pen, set it down, picked it up again. I need someone who can read these documents the way you just did. Quietly, without anyone needing to know why. Nora looked at him steadily. You want me to consult on your contracts without anyone knowing I'm the one doing it, for now. And in exchange? Name it. I don't want more money, she said. I want to keep doing my job without interference. I want access to your legal library on the 7th floor, and I want whatever I identify to be taken seriously without me having to fight for it to be heard. Cole stared at her for a long moment. In his professional life, he had negotiated with executives, attorneys, and investors who had spent decades learning how to ask for things. He had never had someone ask so simply and so precisely for exactly what they needed and nothing more. Done, he said. Then we have a deal. She stood, smoothed the front of her uniform, and picked up her cart from the hallway where she'd left it. Mr. Hargrove, she said from the doorway. Your bathroom on 14 also needs the grout cleaned. I'll take care of it Thursday. Cole Hargrove, for the first time in recent memory, did not know what to say. It started small, the way most things that become large usually do. A sticky note left on a file folder outside the legal department's door. The termination clause in the Bayou Health Agreement has a unilateral trigger. Double-check Section 9. Signed with nothing. 3 days later, one of the junior attorneys found the error, flagged it, and the agreement was revised before signing. He told the senior partner he'd caught it on a second review. He believed that was true. A printed note tucked under Cole's office door. The insurance renewal the risk team submitted has a coverage gap for clinical devices added after 2021. The endorsement on page 4 doesn't update automatically. No signature. Cole took the note to his risk director, who found the gap and fixed it before the renewal went through. In the break room on the 14th floor, Nora was eating lunch one afternoon when 2 compliance analysts sat down nearby, frustrated, going in circles about a Medicare billing dispute that had been stalled for 2 months. "The problem," one of them said, pushing a folder across the table, "is that we can't prove the services were medically necessary without physician sign-off, and the physician retired and we can't reach him." Nora turned a page in her book. CMS has a retrospective review process for exactly that situation. It's in the Medicare Claims Processing Manual, Chapter 13. You can substitute contemporaneous medical records if the documentation meets the clinical indicators on the admission date. You don't need the physician. Both analysts stared at her. "Sorry," Nora said, looking up. "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop." "No," said the younger one slowly. Can you say that again?" She said it again. He wrote it down. The Medicare dispute was resolved within 3 weeks. Nobody connected the dots right away. The legal team thought they were getting sharper. The risk department thought it was a good quarter. The compliance analysts thought the younger one had done good research. But Cole knew. He started finding small reasons to be on whichever floor Nora was working. He would bring documents on a clipboard and stop near where she was cleaning, and they would have what looked, to anyone watching, like a brief and unremarkable exchange. 2 people who happened to be occupying the same hallway, nothing more. In reality, those 4-minute conversations were the most substantive legal analysis happening in the building. It was during one of these hallway conversations that Ryan Marsh found them. Ryan was 28, freshly promoted to junior associate in the legal department, and possessed of the particular kind of confidence that grows in people who have never been seriously wrong about anything yet. He had come around the corner looking for Cole and stopped when he saw the CEO standing in the hallway talking to the cleaning woman. "Mr. Hargrove, I have the Veritas follow-up documents." He trailed off, looking at Nora with an expression she'd seen before. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," Cole said without looking up from the page he and Nora were reviewing. Ryan's eyes moved to the document, then to Nora, then back to the document. Are you showing her confidential, Ryan?" Cole's voice was very quiet. In Nora's experience, very quiet was always more effective than loud. "Go wait in my office." After Ryan left, Cole said, without particular urgency, "He's going to be a problem. People usually are when they feel their expertise is being questioned by someone they've decided shouldn't have expertise." Nora handed the page back to him. "The clause in question is on 34B. The indemnification anchor works, but you need to add a cure period or Veritas can claim breach on technicalities." "How long a cure period?" 30 days minimum. 60 is standard in pharma agreements. Cole wrote it down. "I'll have Patricia revise it. She'll wonder where it came from. She'll think I read more carefully than usual." He paused. "Do you care?" Nora considered this. "I care that the work is good. I don't particularly need credit for it." He looked at her then, and it wasn't quite the look he'd had when she first spoke in the boardroom. That had been calculation, the look of a man evaluating an asset. This was something else, quieter and less organized. "You should care," he said. "Maybe," she said, and pushed her cart toward the supply room. The problem with Ryan Marsh was that he was paying attention. It was a Thursday afternoon when he tracked the pattern. He'd noticed over several weeks that certain issues got resolved quietly, without formal memos, without clear sourcing. He started keeping notes, which floors Cole spent time on, which documents got revised after informal conversations that nobody remembered clearly. He had a theory, and on Thursday he decided to test it. He came around the corner of the 12th floor and found Nora reading a document. Not Cole's document. One that had been left on a cart outside an administrative office, face up and accessible, but still. "What are you doing with that?" he asked. Nora looked at him without alarm. "It was left outside the door. I wasn't going to throw it away without checking if it was important. That's a legal review memo." "I can see that." Ryan stepped closer. "You've been feeding Hargrove information. I don't know how exactly, but I've been watching." He crossed his arms. "You're not qualified to advise on legal matters. You're a janitor, and if I bring this to the board, both of you—" "Ryan," Nora said, and her voice was steady and not unkind, I'm going to stop you there. He blinked. He had expected either defensiveness or retreat. He got neither. I haven't signed any documents, appeared in any official capacity, or represented the hospital in any matter. Everything I've shared has been informal observation, which any employee is allowed to have. What you're describing isn't misconduct, it's collaboration. She set the document down on the cart. But if you'd like to bring this to the board, I think you should think carefully about what the board will focus on. That a maintenance employee has been identifying legal vulnerabilities that the department missed, or that the department missed them. Ryan's jaw tightened. You should read more, Nora said, not unkindly. The manual for FDA clinical trial compliance is publicly available. Chapter 4 is very good. She pushed her cart to the elevator. Ryan stood in the hallway for a long time. The Veritas contract closed on a Friday. $120 million, 3 drug trials, first access rights. Cole's assistant sent a champagne notification to the executive team's phones. There was a small celebration in the conference room on 14. Nora heard about it from the receptionist while she was restocking the supply cart on 12. Big win up there today, the receptionist said. Good, Nora said, and meant it. That evening Cole came to find her before she clocked out. He found her in the basement, organizing the cleaning supply room with the same focus she brought to everything. We closed the deal, he said from the doorway. I heard. Congratulations. He came inside. The supply room was small and well lit and smelled like lemon cleaner. He leaned against the shelving, which was not the kind of thing Cole Hargrove usually did. I want to make your role official, he said. Compliance consultant. Real salary, full benefits, a title that reflects what you actually do here. Nora looked at him. You've thought about this for 2 weeks, and if the board asks why you're promoting a janitor to consultant, I'll say I recognized an asset that was being underused, which is the truth. She turned back to the shelf, straightening a row of bottles. And you're comfortable with people knowing where the analysis came from? Ryan's already suspicious. Others will figure it out. Let them. His voice was firm. I'm not hiding something I'm proud of. The word landed in the space between them. Nora continued, straightening the shelf. I'll accept, she said finally. On one condition, name it. You don't ever make me feel like this is charity. Cole was quiet for a moment. It's the furthest thing from it, she nodded. Then yes. He left and she finished the supply room, and somewhere in the middle of stacking gauze rolls in alphabetical order, she allowed herself a single moment of something that was not quite happiness and not quite disbelief, but something warmly between the two. She did not expect what happened next. A local healthcare journalism blog ran a small piece a few weeks later with the headline, Hargrove Medical's Unlikely Secret Weapon. A reporter had spoken to someone inside the hospital. Nora never found out who. And the piece described, in broad strokes, the story of a custodial employee who had helped crack a stalled pharmaceutical deal with her knowledge of regulatory law. It didn't name her, but it didn't need to. By the next morning, 2 people had forwarded it to Nora's phone, and by lunch, the break room conversations had taken on a different texture. People looked at her. Some smiled. A few seemed newly uncomfortable, which told her things she had already suspected about them. The piece got picked up by a healthcare industry newsletter, then by a regional paper, then by a national outlet that ran it under the headline, The Hospital Janitor, Who Knows More About FDA Compliance Than Your Law Firm. Nora read the headline on her phone during her lunch break and made a sound that was almost a laugh. Cole called her into his office that afternoon. He was standing when she came in, which was new. I didn't speak to the journalist, she said before he could. I know, he said. I did. She stopped. You did. I called the reporter back and gave her the full story. Your name, your background, the specific work you contributed to the Veritas deal. He paused. I should have asked you first. I'm asking you now. Are you all right with that? Nora looked at him for a long moment. Why? Because you deserve to be recognized for work that is yours, and the hospital will survive the embarrassment of having smart people on its payroll in unexpected places. She was quiet. Outside, the Houston skyline was very bright. My daughter is going to see this, she said. Is that a problem? No. A small smile. She's 12. She's going to think it's extremely cool. Cole relaxed slightly. It was visible, the way relaxing was visible in people who didn't do it often. Nora. He said her name differently than he had in the beginning. In the beginning it had been precise, a label. Now it was something else. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. He moved away from the desk, toward the window. Why didn't you go back to school, after your mother recovered? Nora was quiet for a moment. She didn't fully recover. She needed care for about 2 years, and by the time things stabilized, my daughter was 3, and I was working 2 jobs, and the scholarship window had closed. She crossed her legs, easy in the chair. I thought about it every year. I still think about it. But I also realized somewhere along the way that I never actually stopped learning. I just stopped going to a building where learning was officially recognized. That's not the same thing. No, but it's something. He turned from the window. You could go back now. The hospital has tuition assistance. Healthcare law program at South Texas College of Law is one of the best in the country. I know, she said. I've read their curriculum. Something in his expression shifted. Of course you have. I've thought about it. My daughter is getting older. It might be time. She looked at him directly. Why does this matter to you? He answered without hesitation, which surprised them both. Because people who think the way you do should have every credential that reflects it. Not because you need it, because you've earned it, and it should be documented somewhere official so that the next room you walk into, no one can question whether you belong. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that exists when something true has been said, and both people feel it. Thank you, Nora said. Don't thank me, apply. She left his office and stood for a moment in the hallway outside, her cart parked next to the elevator. A compliance analyst she barely knew walked by and said, "Hey, read the article, really cool," and kept walking. Nora pushed the elevator button and looked at the floor indicator and thought about the application she had already, 2 weeks ago, quietly downloaded and half filled out at her kitchen table at 11 p.m. while her daughter slept, and the apartment was quiet, and the only sound was the clock on the microwave and her own pen moving across paper. She thought maybe it was time to finish it. The weeks after the article were strange in the way that changed things are always strange. Not dramatic, just different. Cole started including Nora in early-stage contract reviews, officially now, with a title and a chair at the table. Patricia, the senior attorney, who had spent the first week visibly adjusting, became one of Nora's strongest advocates by week 3. Ryan Marsh transferred to a different department. This was either a coincidence or it wasn't. Cole himself was harder to read than he'd been before. He had always been precise, controlled, contained in a way that his staff had long since stopped trying to breach. But Nora noticed in the weeks after the article that he was different with her. Not unprofessional, always professional, but present in a different way. He listened more. He asked follow-up questions that weren't about contracts. He found reasons to walk the same hallways she was in, which had not stopped being true even after her role changed. One evening they were both still in the building long after most people had left. Nora was in the new small office that had been converted from a storage room on 12. She liked 12, she'd told Cole, because the light was good in the afternoon and it was quieter than 14. She was reading a deposition summary when he knocked on the open door. "You're still here," he said. "So are you." He came in and sat in the other chair without being invited. This had become a pattern she didn't mind. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You asked me that before and I said you could ask, right?" He looked at his hands for a moment. "Do you like this work? Not the compliance, not the contracts. This, being here, in this place." Nora put the deposition down. "I like the work. I liked it before the title too." "I know. That's not what I'm asking." She looked at him, then asked clearly. He was quiet for a moment. Cole Hargrove was a man who said exactly what he meant in boardrooms and depositions and quarterly calls with investors, and who apparently found it significantly harder in a converted storage room on the 12th floor of his own building. "I'm asking if there's anything here, anything about this situation, that you would want to be different." Nora considered the question seriously, which she considered everything. "I want to finish law school. That feels like something that should happen." She paused. "And I think you already knew that." "I did, and you want to know if there's something else." She tilted her head slightly. "You're going to have to be more specific, Mr. Hargrove." "Cole," he said. "You've been calling me that in your head for 6 months. Just say it. How would you know what I call you in my head? Because you're very careful about everything else and very specific with language, and no one that precise uses a formal title in a room with 2 people unless they're creating distance on purpose." Nora was quiet for a moment. You're observant. I learned from someone. Something passed between them in the room. Not dramatic, just real. I'm going to need you to understand something, Nora said. I don't need anything from you. I didn't need the job title. I don't need the recognition or the office or the article. What I need, I have built myself. She met his eyes. So if you're asking what I think you're asking, the answer can't come from gratitude on either side. It has to come from something more honest than that. Cole nodded slowly. I understand that. Good. And I'm asking from something more honest than that. The Houston evening light came in through the window at an angle that made the room warmer than it actually was. Then ask clearly, Nora said again. I want to be in your life, he said. Outside of this building, as someone who knows you and not just what you contribute professionally. He held her gaze. That's as clear as I can put it. Nora looked at him for a long moment. A man who had spent his entire adult life being certain, sitting in a plastic chair in a converted storage room, not entirely certain. My daughter's name is Priya, she said. She's 12. She's currently convinced that the law is boring and that she wants to be a marine biologist. And every other week she changes her mind, and I support both completely. She paused. She's the most important thing in my life. Anyone in my life knows that before anything else. I understand. And if you suggest at any point that my studying law is a conflict with being her mother, this conversation ends permanently. I would never. Good. Nora picked up the deposition again, though she wasn't reading it. You can take me to dinner, somewhere that doesn't require a reservation 2 months in advance. I find that kind of restaurant stressful. Cole, who had not smiled easily in the 6 months she had known him, smiled. There's a place on Westheimer, he said. Good enchiladas, counter, service. That works. He stood. At the door he stopped. Nora, yes, the application. For law school, I submitted it last Tuesday. He was quiet for a moment. Good, I know, she said. Good night, Cole. Good night. She listened to his footsteps go down the hallway, and then sat alone in the warm light of the converted storage room with the deposition in her lap. And she allowed herself, again, that quiet space between happiness and disbelief. Closer to happiness this time, and getting closer still. 4 months later, Nora received her acceptance letter on a Tuesday morning while riding the elevator to the 12th floor. She read it twice on her phone. She forwarded it to her mother. She texted her daughter a single emoji of a graduation cap. Then she got off on 12, set her bag down in the small office with the good afternoon light, and began her day. She told Cole at lunch, not in a dramatic way. She handed him her phone across the table in the counter service place on Westheimer and let him read it. He read it twice, the same way she had. Then he handed the phone back. When do you start? He asked. January. She took her phone back. Evening program. I'll be done in 3 years. We'll adjust your schedule. I know, I already pulled the tuition assistance form. He shook his head slowly. Not at her, but at something he was still, even now, getting used to. A person who didn't wait to be given things but also didn't want to take anything she hadn't earned. Who moved through the world with a kind of clean independence that had quietly rearranged every assumption he'd built in 39 years about what strength looked like. What? She said. Nothing. He picked up his fork. You're going to be very good. I know, she said simply. And she did. Priya met Cole on a Saturday afternoon in October at the kitchen table in Nora's apartment, while Priya was halfway through a model of a whale shark she was building out of craft foam for a school project. She looked at him with the calm appraisal of a 12-year-old who has spent her life watching her mother handle everything and has consequently developed very high standards for what qualifies as worth paying attention to. Are you the one who gave my mom an office? She asked. Sort of, Cole said. She earned it. I just made it official. Priya seemed to consider this. She already had an office. It was the supply room on 3. She did her reading there on breaks. Cole looked at Nora. I may have made use of available space, Nora said, and went back to the stove. Are you going to be around a lot? Priya asked Cole. That depends on your mom. It probably depends on you, Priya said, with the directness of someone who has listened to her mother long enough to have absorbed a certain approach to language. My mom is pretty easy to be around. It's other people who make things complicated. Nora made a sound from the stove that might have been a laugh. Cole looked at Priya. That's fair, he said. She's applying to law school, Priya said, gluing a fin into place. I know. I'm very glad. She's going to be the best one. I know that too. Priya looked up then, just briefly, and something in her expression relaxed in the subtle way of someone who has made a decision they haven't announced yet. "Do you like whale sharks?" she asked. "I don't know much about them," Cole said. "Okay," said Priya, and moved her project slightly toward his side of the table. "I'll explain." And so, Cole Hargrove, who had negotiated $100 million deals and restructured a failing hospital, and been described in industry publications as uncompromising and formidable, sat at a kitchen table in a third-floor walk-up apartment in Houston on a Saturday afternoon, and learned about whale sharks from a 12-year-old while her mother cooked and the apartment smelled like cumin and something sweet, and discovered, without entirely meaning to, that he had never in his life felt so exactly where he was supposed to be.